FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
In 1987 or 88, Sean Connery was playing in the Crosby, and Frank Cherkinian, who was this legendary producer and director, a father of golf television, and a real mentor and father figure to me, had arranged for a round of golf at Cypress Point the next morning, but we were having a late meal there at the lodge at Pebble Beach, and I think he'd had too much wine, and he looked at me at the end of the night and said, "I need you to play for me tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock at Cypress Point." Well, it didn't take a lot of arm twisting for that to sound like something I needed to be involved with. So he said, "Just show up at 8 o'clock, Jimmy. They'll set you up." So I go over to the pro shop, and they say, "You'll be playing today with Floyd Sagely, and you'll be playing with Howard Keel," who was a legendary old Broadway showboat, later Dallas actor, now deceased. "And you'll be playing with Mr. Sean Connery." Well, okay, now how am I going to harness all of this enthusiasm about being with James Bond? So I determined, I'm just going to play it pretty straight. I'm not going to make a fool of myself. I'm going to act like, this is perfectly normal. I was kind of struck too by, at Cypress, you take caddies. He refused to take a caddy. He carried his own clubs, carried his own bag, slung it over the shoulder, and true man's man, he carried his own clubs. But we got to the 7th hole, and you climb up the hill off the 6th green, and he got up onto the tee box, par 3. He was a little unclear who had the tee. So he looked over in my direction and said, "Who has the honor?" And I thought, I said, "Well, you do, sir. You made par at the 6th, and tee is all yours. Go away. Go play away there, Mr. Bond." So just throw that in there. At which point he kind of looked at me like, "What's this all about? This is like some crazy fan or something." So I teed up the ball and the whole thing, and I thought, oh boy, everybody's kind of staring at me. Keel's looking at me. And I thought, I'm going to try to save the moment here. So I pointed out that it is the 7th hole, sir. It should be very kind to you. At which point he gave me one of those. So, it did not. I compounded the felony as Bond snap-hooked the iron shot, short and left of the green into an unraked sand dune, basically an unplayable lie. And I thought, oh boy, I'm never going to hear the end of this if this ever gets back to Cherkinian and Summerall and Venturi. So I went over to inspect the lie, and still trying to, get back in his good graces. And he pulled out a sand wedge and somehow just threw the club down on it. The thing popped up in the air and ran down a slope and got onto the edge of the green. It was a miracle shot. I mean, defied even Ian Fleming's imagination. So I still didn't say anything. And then he stood over the putt from 40 feet away and knocked it in the hole for a 3. And as he went to retrieve the ball out of the cup, he looked over at me and stopped and pointed and said, "You were right, number 7. So I was pleased to see that I had only stirred, not shaken, the legendary actor. But alas, there would be more to the story. We got finished with the round, and Keel and Connery did not have a ride back to the lodge where they were staying, where I was staying. Connery asked me, would I mind giving him a ride back to the lodge? Would I mind? A chance to have a little more hang time here with the cinematic idol of my youth, a man whose every line I could recite by heart. No, absolutely. Jump in the car, guys. It'd be my pleasure. So I threw the bags in the trunk and gave myself a little pep talk that we're going to be, motoring along the windy 17-mile drive. This is not a time to go over the cliff, Don't need to be the guy that ended up, killing Sean Connery, much less Howard Keel. So just as I opened up the driver's door, I noticed the back door, passenger door, was still ajar. So I did what naturally you would do. I turned around and gave it a firm shove as hard as I could, and all of a sudden heard, "Ah!" I looked back as Bond was now on the pavement in agony. I had failed to realize that he had still his left foot outside of the car, planted on the pavement. I had slammed the door right into that tender spot where the ankle meets the shin, and there was a slight rip in his trousers, and blood was starting to trickle through. And I could just imagine now that the guy who was going to be the biggest star of our Saturday show there with the celebrities, a guy they've been trying to get to the tournament for years, has now flown halfway around the world, and because of my carelessness, he has to pull out of the event. I'll never hear the end of this from Cherkinian. So I was trying to offer whatever help I could, and somehow, you know, he was able to get back into the car. It was still just, he was in deep pain. You know, it's just a bad place to hit somebody right here. I did have one kind of weird, perverse thought, though, that I have to own up to. I did think for just a second, it flashed through my mind that, you know, I had managed to do something that Blofeld or any of the other adversaries from the big screen had ever managed to do. I had bloodied the invincible James Bond, so there was a small measure of satisfaction in that. But he recovered, and we made our way back to the lodge, and he invited me to lunch. There at Club 19, which of course I jumped all over that invitation, with Keel and Mr. Sagely, and we sat on a beautiful sun-splashed afternoon as he chomped on grilled calamari, and at the end he said, "Have you ever made your way to the southern coast of Spain?" Well, I had just been there. This was early in my career, and I had assignments like the World Swimming and Diving Championships. So yeah, I was just there. I was in Marbella. Marbella is where I live. I had no idea. I figured he lived in London. He says, "You must call me the next time you're there. We'll play golf. I will host you at my club, Valderrama," which later hosted a Ryder Cup. I said, I had no idea. I was just incredulous. Then I thought, well, how in the world, and I said, how in the world would I ever find you? He said, "It's easy, Jim. I'm in the phone book. Under Connery, Sean Connery."